All right, so today we're going to be looking at another one of our dear friend William Wordsworth's poems. This one's called The Tables Turned, developing some of the themes that we saw yesterday about Romanticism. And we'll spend some time also comparing and contrasting this with The World Is Too Much With Us, the poem that we looked at yesterday. Just to refresh your memory about Romanticism, it's that movement starting in the early 1800s that puts the human mind and imagination and subjective experience at the forefront. This is a move away from literature that focuses on the exalted few to one that celebrates everyday experience, especially profound experiences out in nature. So the tables turned is, in that vein. Yes, sir.
I don't know if you know this, but you're sharing the presentation view.
Yeah, it's because there are students in the room and like the
Uh,
actual view is on my Promethean board. But thanks for the heads up. Maybe there's a way to change it, but frankly, I don't really care as long as you guys are good with it. Okay, so before we do that, um, I have a new cockamamie scheme to try to get some more of you to participate that I wanted to share. I mentioned that for the second semester, I wanted to make some tweaks to the Harkness that we've been doing. So this will be about that. I think when I started doing Harkness, like we got some more participation and it was nice. And I think if I were doing it in person with like a circle discussion a couple times a week, it would be fine. It's just, especially a challenge in the virtual setting. But I do think one of the most important purposes of class is to get people comfortable speaking their ideas, speaking in groups. That's just important in general. It's important for college because you'll take lots of classes where you'll do that, where you are in a group of 10 or 15 people and you have to share. It's also important in your career. You're going to have to present to committees, to departments, and just for life, it's good to be able to verbalize what you think. So I don't want people to like get away too much with not participating. That sounds harsh. I want to encourage you to share your ideas, and I want to see what's going on in your heads. So this is my tweak to accomplish that. So just a couple minor changes to the policy. Uh, First thing I noticed is a lot of people, maybe not a lot of people, but some people, I feel like we're tallying how often they spoke with the thought that, oh, I have to speak X number of times in order to get credit. And I don't want it to become this like calculation where, oh yes, I have to say, 4 things today in order to get an A. Oh wait, did I say 2 things or 3 things yesterday? Like I want it to be more natural than that. So I'm getting rid of the language that specified, how many times you should speak. This will make it a little bit easier for you guys. Basically, like I want to get the sense that if we're having discussions, every once in a while you chime in, right? I want the feeling that like if we're sitting around for 10 minutes, you'll say something. So as long as multiple times a week I hear from you, I'll say that that's enough to get an A, at least in this like one part of it. Now, if you speak multiple times a week and you say absolute garbage or false things, then no, you won't get an A. But I'm getting rid of that frequency part. As long as you talk at least a couple times, let's say, you're good. The other next tweak is I got the feeling that a lot of people thought, well, this is great. I just won't talk ever. And then I'll just write this small essay and then I don't have to worry about it. It's fine. Which is, all well and good if you really don't feel comfortable talking in a group. I get that. And I want you to have an out. But I don't think the out should be a totally different skill, like writing. I think whatever the out should still be discussing, because that's the relevant skill that I'm evaluating here, your ability to verbalize your ideas. So you can still have the alternate form of grading, but instead I want you to do like a video of yourself or an audio recording if you don't want to like have your face on the screen, of just talking about your ideas. How this would work is you would pick like, I would say 2 to 3 readings from the Harkness cycle. So for example, today the tables turned, that would be one reading. And you'll just kind of reflect on what stood out to you, what you found interesting, lines that were important, et cetera, et cetera. It shouldn't be a formal speech or anything like that. It should just be the sort of observations you would share in class. I do that for 2 of those, no more than 10 minutes. Okay. And so our Harkness cycle is going to go, we have all of next week. And then the week after that, the week of February 8th, is a short week because parent-teacher conferences are at the end of it. So this one will go until February 10th. So that's the other tweak. Last tweak I'm making, some of the feedback that I got in the mid-year evaluation was that it's kind of just hard and intimidating to talk when there are 30 people trying like there who could potentially weigh in. So this is kind of an experiment. I don't know if this will help, but maybe it will. I created 2 discussion Harkness groups for the class. Okay. Basically, I split you in half. I tried to like distribute people who speak frequently, people who don't speak as much. Not all the time, but some of the time, I will say something like, okay, we're gonna have group A talk first for 10 minutes. So only these 15 people are eligible to talk. So there's a little less pressure on you. There's a little less of a fear of being edged out by someone who talks more. And then we'll switch over and say, okay, now only group B can talk. So my hope is with a smaller group, you might be more willing to talk. Again, these are just things I'm trying because I do want to hear what you guys think, what you have to say. I'm willing to mess around here to figure out a new method to do that. Yeah, chatting, I'll count chatting. If you want to just type your idea and send it to me, I'm good with that. So I'm not paying attention as much to frequency. Instead, I'm looking at quality. So I want to see that you're referencing the text, whatever it is, that you're showing original thinking, that you are showing civility, maybe posing questions to the group, maybe asking what a particular person thinks or encouraging other people to talk as well. That's all great. No, commenting about my cat does not count. Okay. Any other questions about this? Cool. So we'll start that today with our discussion on this poem, The Tables Turn. So we'll read it first, and then we'll get to the discussion. First half of class will be just talking about it. The second half, we're going to do a little writing exercise attached to it. Okay. So this is The Tables Turned. Could I have a volunteer to read it? Yeah, Tessa. It's a fun one to read. I'm a little jealous of you.
No, I looked through and I think I can pronounce 98% of the words, so that's why I chose.
Oh, wait, hold on. My audio is not going through my Promethean board speakers.
Oh, okay.
Okay, try saying something.
Is this better? Am I talking now?
Perfect, thank you.
Wonderful.
So
Okay.
whenever you're ready, you can begin.
Okay, The Tables Turn by William Wordsworth. Up, up, my friend, and quit your books, or surely you'll grow double. Up, up, my friend, and clear your looks, while all this toil and trouble. The sun above the mountain's head, a freshening luster mellow, through the long green fields have spread his first sweet evening yellow. Books, 'tis a dull and endless strife. Come hear the woodland linnet. How sweet his music on my life. There's more of wisdom in it. And hark, how blithe the throstle sings, he too is no mean preacher. Come forth into the light of things, let nature be your teacher. She has a world of ready wealth, our minds and hearts to bless, spontaneous wisdom breathed by health, truth breathed by cheerfulness. One impulse from a vernal wood, okay, may teach you more of man, of moral evil and of good than all the sages can. Sweet is the lore which nature brings. Our meddling intellect misshapes the beauteous forms of things. We murder to dissect. Enough of science and art. Close up those barren leaves. Come forth and bring with you a heart that watches and receives.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate you reading. You actually do have kind of a podcasting voice. I could see you in broadcasting.
That is the highest compliment I've ever gotten. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So that's The Tables Turned. I really like this poem, but one of the reasons I like to teach it is it's like a poem which is printed in a book and taught in English class, and it seems to be like criticizing books. So the irony of that isn't lost on me. Let's share some initial reactions, though. Just first thoughts, things that come to mind.
It's very optimistic when compared with The World Is Too Much With Us. It presents actual like choices and things you can do instead of just daydreaming.
You read this in Euro? Oh no, sorry. But yes, that's. I appreciate that. It's a good place to start. Let's go with. How about Lisandro next?
I was just gonna comment on the rhyming scheme. I think it's probably like an AB form. I just realized that.
Yeah, it has this kind of nursery rhyme kind of form, which is part of why I think it's fun to read. Yeah, it's a good observation. Let's go with Colin.
I think it's also kind of emblematic of some of the philosophical currents at the time. Like it really emphasizes like personal experience rather than like received wisdom, which is like was common in liberalism at the time, and also in sort of just the reaction against scholasticism from the Enlightenment beforehand. So it's kind of funny that the Romantics seem to be reacting against the Enlightenment, but also sort of keeping some of the ideas from it, like the focus on empirical observation over like something that you could find in a book by a Greek.
Yeah, that's also a great point. You talk about scholasticism in AP Euro too?
Yeah.
Cool. Good to know. I really do need to coordinate with Ms. Cabot more. Okay, let's go with Ocean.
My first thought was it just kind of reminded me of where he's like, stop reading your books, go outside. To
Yeah.
like now where it's like, get off your phone, go outside, come on. Like go out and actually do things. It's ridiculous to just stay holed up in your house. It's like the same type of theme in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's definitely something that I find funny that even back then they were still saying that same thing. And like you would think that as a teacher I would be encouraging you to spend more time with books, but I do agree with this idea here. Okay, let me go with Tessa next.
Oh, hi. While reading it and just yeah. Anyways, I think since Romanticism, a lot of it is about this rejection of like science and like being like, let's just feel again. Let's just all be emo. I think the line when he's like, enough of science and art, straight up just says like, forget everything, just feel. So I think this is a very straightforward example of Romanticism. It's not like you have to find what it means. He just says like reject science.
Mm-hmm. Good. Let's go with Phoebe next.
I'm just looking at the title of the book, and I mean, this was kind of already talked about, but I guess the title is saying like he's turning the tables, or it's like unconventional for him to say to learn by going out into nature, but instead he's saying don't use books to learn, go out into nature, which obviously for us isn't as like conventional because we learn in school rather than going outside and like observing things that happen in the real world.
Yeah, great. again, I appreciate thinking about the title and how that applies, because I do think the title isn't as obvious as some of the other poems that we've read. How about Alexander?
Similar to what Ocean said, I was going to point out the irony of reading a poem that's like get your head out of a book, but we're in like English class.
Yeah,
I just thought that was kind of funny.
good, definitely. And Colin, do you have something else to add, or is that just from before?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I always think about when I read poems like this is that I'm pretty sure Wordsworth was relatively wealthy. Like, I think he was somehow, I think he had a fair amount of property. So I always kind of like thinking about what would happen if you like read this book to like one of the serfs who are like working 12 hours a day, and they probably would say like, I would love to go inside and read a book. You like, you emo weirdo, but maybe that's just my cynical take on it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I like how you're bringing class consciousness into this, because he would be writing this. I mean, lyrical ballads that this poem was written in was an incredibly popular book at the time, but also you would need to have the wherewithal to be purchasing books and reading poetry in your leisure time. So that would only appeal to a certain type of person. Yeah, I like that. Okay. I was gonna have us. Well, why don't we do this? It seems like we got a pretty good grasp of it from the first reading out loud. So I don't think we need to do another out loud reading, but I'm gonna give you just another couple minutes to read it again, and then see what else you find. Again, in terms of how it's written, the choices that Wordsworth makes to convey this idea, and any individual lines that strike you. From there, we'll try our first half Harkness, and we'll spend just a few minutes on that, and then we'll transition to the next activity. You're so good. You don't even want to read it out loud. Exactly. So here, let me show you our Harkness groups. If someone wants to come up with like a name for your group that's more interesting than group A and group B, I'm all for that. Like I don't know, purple parrots or something. So let me know. Think of a name for your group. So we'll start with this first group. So here you are. I'm gonna let you guys talk first, and then after, I don't know, a few minutes, or after it seems like discussion has been exhausted, we'll switch over to the next group. You could also see here the new things that I'm tracking that'll contribute to your grade. So take a couple minutes, read it again, see if you observe anything, and then this first group will talk, and then we'll switch over to the next group. By civility, I mean just like not dismissing other people's thoughts, but also perhaps encouraging others to speak, asking questions of the whole group, things like that. I don't think it'll be a problem with this class, but maybe it will be now. Christina, do you have a question, or are you just ready and raring to go with your discussion?
I was just ready to get us started. I didn't know how long you were gonna give us to read.
Yeah, we could get started. So again, it's that first half of the class. I'll show it one more time just to remind you these people. So whenever you guys are, well, I'll start with Christina, I guess, since you raised your hand first. So go ahead, start us off.
Well, I was just gonna touch on like kind of what other people were saying, just about how like the line that stood out to me was like one impulse from a vernal wood may teach you more of man, like kind of saying that like having like true experiences is going to teach you more about people and like who people are than reading about people. But I also, when I read this, I thought it was kind of ironic because similarly to what somebody else said, I feel like nowadays I hear people saying like, go read a book and like get off your phone and go read a book. Don't like sit like on technology. And not that people don't say go outside, they say that too, but also I feel like there's a lot less people like exploring the realm of like literature today than back then.
Yeah, great. It is interesting how culturally what people get, chastised about shifts over centuries. But how about Dan?
So with the Transcendental movement being inspired from the Romantic movement, in this poem we see a lot of like the natural elements being glorified, and I found a lot of use of personification to make the elements more like vivid and powerful to a reader. So a lot of like personification.
Sure. Do you have an example that stood out to you?
Yeah, so I found like, let's see, there was one about how Blythe the Throstle sings. He too is no mean preacher. So it compares it to like a preacher, someone like he encourages you to learn from nature, and as a preacher, you learn from a preacher. So
great, good. Yeah, I love the idea of the temple or the outdoors as a sort of temple, and the birds themselves as like the religious leaders. Let's go with Oliver.
One line that I found interesting was, our meddling intellect misshapes the beauteous form of things. Kind of how humans attempt to understand nature, and through that, they kind of inadvertently end up destroying part of it. Like animals were going extinct at extreme rates because people were killing them for like fashion and science and stuff. So kind of says like we should just kind of like leave it alone. To like nature is where it is, and we should stay where we are, like stay in our lane kind of.
Yeah, it's a great point. I kind of wonder about this sometimes, like if you're studying something like biology or botany, does understanding every single detail about the the chemical structure or functionings of an organism, does that ruin your appreciation for it? I don't know. Frankly, I would push back against that view that Wordsworth is putting out and say, I don't really think it does. But that seems to be his point, that if you're just like going out there as a naturalist trying to understand how an organism works, you're sort of missing the point. But maybe he has something to that. Okay, let me go with Kellen next.
Dan mentioned personification earlier, so my favorite line really is, or a line that stood out to me is, let nature be your teacher. And on the surface, when you read that, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. But I was thinking, like, what does that actually look like? Do you really go out there and just like stare at trees and like think about what works and what's true? Or are you going to actually like be doing like experiments and like kind of developing like formal things and learning based off that? And I guess it's more of the latter, especially considering like during the time period, what people were doing. They were kind of going out into the world and like theorizing things like evolution and whatnot. But I guess on the surface, at least when I first read all that, I was like, oh, you just basically want to go out and meditate or something like that. But I don't think it's the case.
Yeah, I love that question because it's true. It's like, well, what exactly do you mean here? Like, what do you want me to do? Like, I'll go for a nature walk, and is that like I don't feel transformed? Like it was nice, but like it wasn't a profound spiritual experience. So yeah, how to proper? It's almost an attitude about how to properly engage with nature and the sort of mental frame you're going to take into the woods. Good. How about Tessa?
Okay, mine, I was actually going to build off of Oliver because I picked out, I think I emphasized this while reading. I said, we murder to dissect. And I just think that line is interesting. I was looking at that concept of more like us humans, we overanalyze things to a point where things become pointless. And I think this is very evident, I don't know, in let's say hypothetically an English essay where you have to analyze what the author is doing to make a point and how it's like there's more to it when really we should just appreciate the work for what it is and leave it at that. So I just found that really interesting about how just us humans, we're intellects, we want to break everything down and figure out how everything works when we should just let it be.
Yeah. You know, Tessa, you just inspired me. You're absolutely right. Forget it, guys. No more essays, no more analysis. That's it. It's over. We'll just do story time the rest of the year. I think that's what.
Thank you. I agree. That's how we should.
Yeah. Okay. Let me go with. Okay, I'm gonna say that for these 4 people, these are the last of it, because now you're all like talking more than I was expecting, which is great. So thank you all for the sudden outburst of participation. I will say for everyone who talked, like that's what you need to. If we do this, like, and you do that just a few times a week, that's what you need to do to get an A for this assignment. So thank you. This was great to hear your views. But I do want to get to the last writing assignment. So just these last 4 people, and then we'll move on. And group B people, I haven't forgotten about you. Tomorrow we'll start with you guys, so you'll get a chance to chime in as well. Okay. Let me go with Alex.
I wanted to comment on the rhyme scheme.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's A, B, and then C, D, C, D, right? Because the words change, but anyway, it conveys like the beauty and the satisfaction you get that Wordsworth wants you to experience in nature. So I just thought that contributed to the meaning of the poem.
Yeah, definitely. Good. Let's go with, how about Allie?
So I was just gonna talk about kind of what like Oliver and Tessa were talking about with like kind of like over analyzing. Like it's not like for everyone. So if you go out into nature, you can always like no matter where you are, there's something like smaller going on. Like if you're in nature, you can always like look into like how the ecosystem works and like all that stuff. But it's not for everyone. Like some people can like get kind of like uncomfortable with like all the small things that go into that. And that kind of goes with like reading and everything. Like some people will read a book and be like, yeah, that was good, and then other people are going into like what like the super like dark meaning of it is, and like some people don't see the point of that.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, how about Christina next?
I just noticed something kind of about the structure. In line 8, he says his first sweet evening yellow, and then in line 17 says she has the world of ready wealth, and then in line 16 nature is capitalized. So I feel like it creates this sense of like unity, like by mentioning like not just referring to nature as he, like not that we're giving nature a gender, but like I feel like often it's like we see he instead of she, but presenting both, I thought that was interesting. And then like capitalizing nature kind of like makes it more personal, and like giving it a name makes it like a bigger subject, I guess you could say.
Yeah, great. And last but not least, Pete.
I was looking.
Sorry.
It's okay. I was looking at the same line as Tessa, that we murder to dissect, because like when she enunciated it, it stood out to me like how he used the word murder, just because it, I don't know, really criticizes people who aren't like observing nature, but instead have to change it. Like that's kind of an answer to Kellen's question when he said, like, what does nature being your teacher mean? I think it more so means just observing it and not interacting in a way where it will like change it or destroy it, like dissecting things. I don't know. In my opinion, I think like dissecting is still interacting with it, but I guess he doesn't want it to be like changed or touched.
Mhm. Yeah, I totally agree, and I like how we have like kind of homed in on that line because murder to dissect. I think that's where there's probably the most room for debate and the most confusion about what exactly Wordsworth is saying here and what's the best way to interact with nature. Okay. All great comments. I hope we can keep up that pace actually in the future. But let me wrap up class by explaining our ending activity. And again, Group B people, you'll be able to start our discussion tomorrow. Okay, let me just explain this. You can start it now and then finish it for homework. So far we've read 2 poems from Romanticism, The World is Too Much With Us, and The Tables Turned. What I want you to do is kind of put these 2 in conversation, taking the broad topic of nature and try to say something a little bit deeper about what each of them contributes to the movement. Okay, so I want you to, continuing with the idea of us practicing topic sentences, I created this template for you guys to use, kind of rub the poems against each other and see what sparks fly. So this is kind of a mini paragraph assignment. So what I want you to do, should be pretty short, not a full paragraph, but you're going to have 1 topic sentence that fits this template, and then simply find 2 quotes, 1 quote from each poem that support whatever idea you come up with this template. Okay, so this is how it'll work. The template says, "But the world is too much with us, and the tables turned address blank." And this blank is some kind of theme about nature. I put a complex theme here. By that, I simply mean nothing overly simplistic. So you shouldn't say, "Both the world is too much with us and the tables turned address the importance of nature," right? Don't do that. Try to come up with some sort of message, maybe by combining several ideas together. For example, that idea about dissecting nature might lead you to some interesting interpretation. So both the world is too much with us and the tables turned address blank, but whereas the first text blank, the other one blank. So these are kind of sub-themes that explain the slight differences in how each poem addresses nature. Hopefully that makes sense. So then following that, you can just say, for example, in The Tables Turned, Wordsworth writes, blah, 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 this shows this. On the other hand, The World is Too Much With Us, he writes, blah, 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 this shows this. Right? So really, this doesn't have to be any more than maybe 5 sentences. Don't go too crazy and spend an hour trying to make it something amazing. Really, what I want you to do is just focus on developing a more complex theme and using this kind of template as a topic sentence practice. Let me also say, make sure your quotes are embedded. So don't just plop quotes in, make sure you're introducing them with a quote tag, phrase of your own writing, and then end the quote with a citation where you put the line and then the line number, just multiple lines, put lines, and then like 1-2. Okay. Cosmos is on top of it. All right, any questions on that?